It was at Roscoe's where I met the stranger. I've been helping old Teddy unearth a tree stump. Well, I was the one unearthed the damn thing. Teddy being long in the tooth and missing half his hand besides, but I'm a big man and was happy to help the old timer out. Of course, that's the trouble with being a big man. People always imposing on you to lift this or reach for that. Always come looking for you first when trouble comes also. But I ain't complaining. Truth is, I'd help Teddy pull out 100 old stumps, roots and all, if I could go back to the way things was. I wouldn't even ask for a couple beers afterward for my trouble, but that's life. There's no going back. So I sat at Roscoe's, polishing off a few cold ones, assuring Teddy we was square as bricks. There were a couple folks milling around, a couple prospector-looking fellas poring over some maps and thoughtfully nodding at the direction of what I assumed to be their leader. I wished 'em luck, certain kind of fool to wager all on the hopes of being the one, miracle of miracles, comes across a vein that hadn't been come across already, if ever there were even there in the first place. I had my doubts, still. Being a fool don't make you a bad man, and I reckon some good thing happening in this town would be a fine thing. Not that much bad happened here, just not much good either. Not much of anything. I will say, though, that Elizabeth was a good thing. She sat at the other end of the bar holding forth with Roscoe as he wiped down glasses and never seemed to get any clearer for all his worrying at 'em. Poor girl had a tough to go with, what with her pa falling ill in the winter back, as many of us did. But that girl took to her family's farm like a chick takes to flying. I'd know her since she was a sprout, and she ain't never lose her girlish ways, even as the land toughened her hands and the sun wrinkled the skin around her eyes. So yeah, this little town wasn't nothing special. People here were no better or worse than anywhere else. We worked and drank and had a laugh every now and then. We didn't deserve what happened that day. The bell by the door rang and a man walked in. Hindsight can be a real son of a bitch, but I keep thinking that I should have known what he was about when I first laid eyes on him. But that's just regret, I suppose. I used to think that there were only two true evils in this world, regret and illness. Well, let me tell you something. I have both, and they ain't true evil. They just come along with it like coughs to a cold. I could have known what he was. This man was tall but switch thin. He walks through the door real calm and throws himself into a table just behind where I sat at the bar. Roscoe puts down his glass and walks around the bar. See if he can get him anything. I spun around in my seat and gave him a friendly nod, but I noticed there was something off about him. Like I said, he was a tall man, but thin, very thin. But that wasn't what bothered me about him. It took a moment to settle in on it. But after a few moments, I realized what it is. He had a lazy smile on his face, kind of like a half smile, just showing a little bit of teeth. And he was sprawled out in his chair like a cat in a patch of sunlight. But it was the eyes that got me. Once I was young, I knew of a man that got drunk one night and decided to make himself a fire. Ember jumped out on the hearth and caught the rug. Rug went up, the house burnt down. Man got out, but his wife and 3 boys went up with everything else. I was one of those poor bastards that had to hold the man back as all the realizations dawned on him. He was the one that burned everything. He was the one that killed his wife. He was the one that burned his children. We had to hold him back to prevent him from rushing inside and killing himself. At total odds with the rest of him, this fella that sat across from me at Roscoe's had the same eyes that man that night. panicked, feverish, like he was being forced to do something that contradicted everything he holds sacred. "What brings you in today?" Roscoe asked. Man looked up at his face and said, "Hunger. We got some steaks in the back, Hamburg. Don't got 'em here, but Rosie McCarthy got her pies at the general store if you got sweet tooth." "Nothing just yet," the man said in a sing-song kind of voice. "Whiskey for now, it'll help." Roscoe's little mustache twitched a bit, but you don't run a tavern for long if you question every reason why a man might drink. And so he shrugged, turned around, got the man his libatations, and returned to pour. "Leave the bottle, please," the man said, and I swear I thought I saw tears welling in those tortured eyes. Now I'm sensitive to the fact that some men grieve in different ways. Some want to tell you about it, some want to bury it deep. I wasn't aiming to pry, but I thought I'd extend a hand to see if I couldn't bring him some cheer. I knew everyone in this town, and being a stranger to such a place might not be an easy thing. So I says, "Hey, friend, welcome town. You ride in this morning?" The man turned his head slowly to face me, but his bulging eyes didn't meet mine. "No, not rode. Was led. Was driven." I wasn't sure what to make of that. "One of them new stagecoach companies out of Shalloworth or Bearbrook?" I offered. "No, not new. Old. Very old. Older than death that ravaged Europe, so. Older than the terrible Wallachian impaler. Older than the great Mongol warlord. Older even than the first man to bash another head with stone. Each of our tools are different, but the results are the same. Each of our hearts are different before, but serving the same purpose after. It is the pest, it is the old stag, it is the hob cane and Nevelethin." I realized then that I was talking to a crazy man. "Well, enjoy your stay, I suppose," I said, deciding to politely leave him to his ruminations. "Forgive me," he muttered. "Nothing to forgive, friend," I said, already turned it back to Teddy and Roscoe. The barman raised his eyebrows at me, then went back to cleaning his glasses. "So like I was saying," Teddy started, "but then all the sound, save for the high ringing sound, left the world. And Roscoe's head vanished. Simple as that. It was there one moment, then gone the next. So cleanly was he decapitated that he even wiped his glass a few more times before it slid from his fingers and shattered on the ground. His body followed a moment later. I didn't know what to make of it. I turned, falling to the ground, just as Teddy was knocked clear over the bar. Hot liquid pattered my face, and I saw that it was blood, falling down all around me like a sudden rainstorm. I looked towards the man who turned a gun he pulled from his jacket on the three prospectors. They had only gained to their feet and were reaching for their tools. I never found out if they planned to run with their livelihood or attack the crazed gunman, because in 3 quick bursts he shot down all 3. Their bodies exploded like ripe peaches as each round cut into them. What occurred next happened in a blur. I sprang to my feet and grabbed the first thing I could find, my bar stool, and I hurled it at the murderer. He was just bringing the weapon around to make the end of me when the stool slammed into his face, knocking him back and causing the gun to clatter to the floor. I instinctively lunged for it, grabbing it by its handle even as it bounced off the floor. It felt good in my hand. Without thinking, I turned it on its previous owner and fired. Shot blew a fist-sized hole through his gut and the wall behind him. He slumped to his knees, and a pool of blood, so thick it looked black, began to flow all around him. Anyone could see he was a dead man, but even still he looked up at me, his eyes meeting mine for the first time. They no longer looked so haunted, and even as blood poured from his mouth, he smiled. "Thank you," he mouthed, then pitched forward face down on the ground, his boots kicked up in the air, and then fallen still. I sat in stunned silence, trying to work out what just happened. It took me a moment to notice the gun in my hand. It did not shake. It was a massive piece of work, made from sturdy metal and engraved in strange symbols that I didn't recognize. Sound was only returning to the world now. Only it wasn't what I expected. Instead, it was the frantic whispers of what seemed like hundreds of voices, all struggling to be heard over one another. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but soon they all ran together, like hearing a waterfall in the distance. And all at once it stopped. World was it was. And I could only hear sobbing coming from a corner of the bar. Pattern of the blood on the floorboards. I stood up shakily and made my way for the crying. It would be Elizabeth, I knew. She was alive. I found her crouched on the ground, covering her head with her hands. She flinched as I drew near and peeked out between her fingers. A shudder rolled through her when she saw it was me. She stood up and came to me, arms extended for an embrace, her girlishness coming out of her in fear of what just happened. Such a little thing. I blew her completely in half with one shot. I watched myself do it. From a small room from within my own mind, I would have vomited, but I realized I didn't have a stomach. It wasn't mine anymore. It was that gun that piloted my body now. And it led me through the door and out into town. I had some neighbors to visit. That was almost 50 years ago now. I've withered and aged, but I still feel that hot fire of what I've been made to do. I stopped apologizing years ago. It's silly. Even regret atrophies. Though I accept that I'm a vehicle for a mindless and ever-hungry beast that will never stop. But it is limited to my own slowing body. Soon it will need a new host, and I will go the same way as the stranger in Roscoe's Tavern did, I reckon. Or so I thought. You see, I'm in a new tavern now. I look at the patrons sitting around me with the same haunted eyes I saw all those years ago, knowing that none of them will ever leave this room. But there is an unexpected commotion. A man rushes into the tavern and shouts at the barman to turn on the radio. He does, and everyone listens close. Once again. The voice crackles over the speakers. Japan has surrendered. The war is over. President Truman authorized 2 atomic bombs to be dropped over the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and soon after accepted the island's nation unconditional surrender. The war is over. The tavern explodes into cheers. Patrons hugging and dancing. Barman uncorks a bottle of champagne and it rains its contents all over us. Can you believe it? A stunned man sitting next to me asks. A bomb that can vaporize an entire city. What a world! I watch as the gun curled my lips into a smile. Through it, I see all the years of its existence. A caveman using flint to abstain and hunt his fellow proto-man. A warlord using bronze swords to raise cities. The pontiff using words and faith to send thousands to kill and die. And now the gun, the ability to take life with the simple pull of the trigger. The most horrible weapon to grace the earth. Until now.